First game of pre-season is completed, and it is our first win of pre-season. And as with a lot of last year's pre-season, it's going to be the youngsters that are going to take all of the plaudits. A fantastic second half performance from them. We will get to them shortly, but we will, of course, start with the first half performance and the debut of Mason Mount, who I thought had a very, very good debut. First 10 minutes of the game in particular, he looked very eager to get on the ball. All the sort of things that you would expect from an Erik ten Hag player. Movement, dropping into space, getting on the ball, direct, forward passing. Looked really, really dangerous, Mason Mount. The sort of style of play I've not seen from him in a very, very long while. So clearly whatever was happening with him at Chelsea had clearly been knocking his confidence and his overall momentum. But he looked very, very dangerous in those first 10-15 minutes. Almost scored an incredible goal, nicking the ball on the halfway line, taking a few touches, and then looking to dink the goalkeeper, but sadly just wide. A couple of other times, like I say, he was picking the ball up deep in midfield, playing some fantastic through balls, getting the likes of Ahmad away down the far side, playing little balls into Hugill and Sancho in the more forward areas. Really, really impressed with Mason Mount on his debut. Not really much more else to say about him. Like I say, it's just a shame he wasn't able to get a goal to cap off what was a fantastic first half performance from him. Look forward to seeing a lot more of him over the rest of pre-season, but so far, after just 45 minutes, it has to be said, looks like a fairly decent buy. Same has to be said for the whole rest of that midfield. The midfield three today was Maino, Hugill and Mount, and all three of them I thought were fantastic in that midfield, especially Maino, who isn't really known for being the holding midfielder, but it seemed like the way we were playing Ten Hag's want to play of 4-1-2-3, and it was Maino that was the one. Now normally you would associate him with a more advanced role, but I don't know if he transitioned a little bit towards the back end of last season, but he was the one playing the holding role today, and I thought he was very, very impressive in there. Again, great touch, good movement, firm in tackles as well. He was winning the ball back well. Looked really, really creative when he got it as well. So interesting to see how much of a role he's going to play going forward. Of course, Manchester United are still in the market for a more defensive style midfielder, potentially a little bit more creative, the likes of Sophie and Amrabat being mentioned, but I thought Maino was impressive. And again, same has to be said for Hugill. You know what you're going to get with him. He hairs around like a maniac. He puts his foot in. We're against Leeds United, it has to be said as well. So you know that Hugill was definitely going to be putting his foot in. And no surprise to see him pick up a yellow card as well for his troubles. But he looked very dangerous as well. Again, great touch, good movement. Looked very threatening in and around the penalty area. Had a couple of shots without any going in. And he had the best chance of that first half. Good play in the wide areas. It came to him inside the penalty area, but unfortunately hit his shot straight at the goalkeeper. And that was half-time, unfortunately. It was 0-0. There were a few disappointing performances, I have to say, in that first half. Firstly, Jadon Sancho, I thought he was appalling. Granted, he was playing up front, which is definitely not his position. I have spoken before about playing Jadon Sancho in the middle because he lacks pace and he just didn't really ever get going in the game. He had a few little flicks and touches like you would expect from Jadon Sancho, but due to his lack of pace, he wasn't able to get in behind the centre-backs, and his composure on the ball, which is normally so good, just deserted him today. He had a fantastic chance to score a goal, and I'm sure if you go online, you'll see the stills of the opportunity that he passed up. Instead of just side-footing it in the back of the net, he tried to take a touch and trick the defender, completely fell over the ball. Ball rolls away from me, tried to set up another teammate, but it wasn't to be. Like I say, very disappointed with him. Same has to be said for Amad Diallo. Other than a few little jinking runs that just ended up going nowhere, I was very disappointed with him. I expected a lot more from Amad, considering all the stuff that he did at Sunderland last season in the Championship against what is going to be Championship opposition next season. I expected a lot more from Amad, and he didn't really do it. I was also slightly disappointed with Wan-Bissaka. I have to say that. I thought it was a bit lazy today. It was obviously the first game of pre-season. It was a friendly, but given how dynamic Wan-Bissaka is, normally getting up and down and then making those scoopy Spider-Man slide tackles that he does, I thought at times defensively he was very, very lazy. He was getting forward well, trying to create chances, but when we lost it, he wasn't as eager to get back as he usually is, and Varane and Martinez were having to come over a fair amount to cover for Wan-Bissaka, so I'll keep an eye on that going through the rest of pre-season, because we can't be having that from Wan-Bissaka. No real complaints again about Varane and Martinez. You get what you get from them. They are just absolutely solid defensively. And the one thing I have to say finally for the first half is Tom Heaton, I thought, encapsulating what we want to see from a Manchester United goalkeeper. Coming out from the box, there was one moment in the start of the first half where Leeds kicked the ball clear from the corner and Tom Heaton intercepted the clearance on the halfway line, something you'd never see from David De Gea. So good to see that we're already moving towards a style of play where the goalkeeper is expected to essentially be another defender. So good to see that in action, and the high press as well, causing a lot of problems to Leeds in that first half. On to the second half, and like I say, it was all about the youngsters. It was essentially our PL2 team, our youth team, and I thought they were absolutely fantastic. And considering that Leeds probably brought on their more recognisable players in the second half, the likes of Patrick Bamford, Luke Ayling, Pascal Struijk, Dan James, Joe Gelhardt, and a couple of others, they probably had a tougher opposition than what you would call first team squad had to come up against, and they played even better than what the first team did. So very, very impressed with our youngsters. I think we have a lot of talented players, and what's most impressive for me is that the two players that were the worst, in my opinion, in the first half, being the forward and the right wing, in Sancho and Ahmad in the first half, those were then the two best players in the second half, in Hugill and Noam Emaram. So really, really impressed with the pair of them. I've spoken about Joe Hugill on this channel already a couple of times. Every single time I look at a PL2 fixture, Joe Hugill scored a goal. And we keep talking about all these strikers that we're looking at. Kolo Muani, Højlund, Kane, Osimhen. But I'm telling you, I've seen a kid today that is a very, very talented centre-forward. The sort of movements that he makes are exactly what you want from a number 9. You talk about the likes of Javier Hernandez, Carlos Tevez, Edison Cavani, those sort of poacher-type players that we've had at Manchester United over the last 10, 15 years. And he's got this. His movement off the Leeds United defence was absolutely incredible. And on another day with slightly better service, I think he would have actually got himself a couple of goals, because he looks very, very dangerous, causing all sorts of problems for the defence. And when his chance came, after a great ball from Emaran, he took it phenomenally. And speaking of Emaran, a goal and an assist from him from that right wing position. He looked very, very good. Very tricky on the ball. Basically, what I expected from Ahmad in the first half, we got from Emaran in the second half. And it's good to see the United Academy producing talents like this, because obviously I can't see him going into regular first team action. We've got the likes of Anthony and Sancho and Ahmad, as we just mentioned, Palistri. I would say at least one of them is probably going to go out on loan anyway, and then Emaran will either stay in the youth academy for this season or we'll send him out on loan. But he looks like a very, very talented right winger, coming in on his left foot, creating chances, a couple of shots, a couple of crosses, the sort of things that we say about Anthony, but he was doing the things we expect from Anthony. He was going onto his right foot, coming back in on his left, back out onto his right, putting balls in with both feet, having the odd pop shot as well, and he took his chance very well. And like we said, set up that goal for Hugill as well. So very, very impressed with the second half performance. There's a fair few other youngsters I could certainly mention who played very well in the second half. I think one player that needs to be very worried about his Manchester United future is Brandon Williams. The fact that he didn't play in the first team. Alvaro Fernandez played ahead of him, basically meaning that Brandon Williams is now fourth choice left back, and he's 22 years of age as well. Secondly, the fact that Charlie Savage was captain in the second half and not him. He was the more experienced player in the squad, and Charlie Savage was captain ahead of him. So I think Brandon Williams' future is very, very much in doubt. But that whole second half, I thought the Manchester United youth team played very, very well. And at the end of the day, it's the first win of the tour in the first game of the tour. So I'm very happy with the performance. Obviously, we've spoken about some players that were disappointing. It'll be very interesting to see what happens to them in the coming weeks in the remainder of the transfer market. But positive signs from that first game, certainly in terms of some of the first team players and especially those youth team players. We'll see what happens next week against Lyon, when I think a fair few more regular first team players will be back and available. And I'll catch you for my reaction to that once that game is finished. I'll see you then.